Folks, before you do check in, there's a liability form that you need to read or not, but we prefer you sign it, please. If you would read it, you prefer it. So folks, there's going to be some liability forms that you're going to need to sign. Okay. And then you can check in with Ms. Wazo. Don't read it all the way, please. Just sign it. Yeah, just sign it. Yeah, just sign it.
No.
It doesn't matter what it says.
It's all right. I'm gonna sign.
There you go. As long as you read it. Which one? Did everybody give their tickets to Ms. Wazo? Or check in via phone?
Because he was on the outside. Locked that door and was trying to stay. He squalled like a 2-year-old. Hey, there's money there.
The night of February 2nd, 1980. These gentlemen were sentenced to a term sentence, not a death sentence. State of New Mexico dropped the ball, they lost their lives. Okay? So let's give them a moment of silence, please. Okay, if I could have everybody do an about face. Okay, this painting here was done by that same level 2 offender, and what it represents is the 22 officers and 1 med tech that were on duty the night of February 2nd, 1980. These gentlemen came in for a routine shift. However, it turned out to be one of the most horrific shifts of their lives. What they went through is unspeakable. Okay, so let's give them a moment of silence. Okay, if I could bring everybody this way, please. Okay, this is our wall of fallen officers. These gentlemen have lost their lives in the line of duty to protect the state of New Mexico and you and I. Anybody that comes into corrections, every day is an unknown. Okay? These gentlemen paid the ultimate sacrifice. So if we could just give them a moment of silence, please. Okay, again, my name is Trinidad Lucero. I will be your tour guide. I have 15 years with the department. 10 years I worked inside the facility. I left the facility as a sergeant before I came to Corrections Industries as the program manager. Throughout the years, I ended up being the operations manager. I oversee the entire state with all of CI's programs. Ms. Wazo, who is back there, will make sure you guys stay together with her either mace or cattle prod. I don't know what she's brought today. She is now the programs manager for Santa Fe. So she oversees the whole main. She made me do this tour, so you guys say thank you to her. It's not people blame me. We have a lot of different facilities throughout the state that do a lot of different things. Our whole purpose is inmate programming. If you guys have any questions throughout the tour, whether it's security side or the administrative side, feel free to ask, and I'll be able to answer them for you, okay? Again, the whole purpose of our tour is respecting our past to create a better future. What does that mean? Finally acknowledging the atrocities that did occur the night of February 2nd, 1980, and how we move forward as a department, how we're continuing to move forward as a department to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, New Mexico has that history of being the most violent prison riot in U.S. history. That's not something that we want to have. We don't want something like this to happen again in any other state. We don't want to pass that torch. Okay, so we got to ensure what we do here today, make sure this doesn't happen again. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Why?
I'm interested.
History? Learn a little bit. Okay, so if I'm not speaking loud enough, if I'm not articulating myself well, because I have that northern accent, please let me know. I will slow it down, okay? So right now we're in the administrative corridor. What was in here, these two hallways, was your admin secretaries, your case workers, things like that. When the inmates finally did make it to this area, we had records. Okay, so this is 1980. If you could look at the picture as you pass by, they systematically destroyed every single record that was on site. Again, it was the 80s. Not a lot of computer backup, not a lot of things like that to allow us to grab that information back quickly. So if you could imagine the rebuild process of going to each county, each judge, each this, each that, trying to find 1,157 inmate files throughout the state of New Mexico. Okay? So just that process alone took years and years. Keep moving. Just scared to speed up. Come on, man. Okay, again, these are the administrative corridors. The offices do look a little bit different. So in New Mexico, the film industry has found the Penitentiary of New Mexico. They have shot multiple films here, so you're going to see a lot of different styles of offices. Now that industries took over 5 years ago, when the film industries do come in, if it's beneficial for the facility, we'll allow them to leave it, paint, things like that, we don't mind. But it does bring in a source of revenue for industries and it helps us out, okay? Whether it's helping keep this building as historically accurate as possible or doing improvements to it. Okay, originally the facility was built in 1955. It was designed to hold 900 inmates. Okay, on the night of February 2nd, 1980, there was 1,157 inmates present. Remember that number? I will ask later. If you get it wrong, you will be housed here for at least a day. Okay? There's a quiz. I forgot to tell you guys that. Okay, so most of your inmates were Hispanic, Roman Catholic, doing time for their first crime, little to no education. To work here, are you interested? Sure, here's an application. Okay, we ran it, all good to go. Here's a set of keys, a radio, and a hat. Get to work. That was as formal as it was. Even when I started 15 years ago, I'm escorting a group of inmates, 18 years old, trying to get through a gate. Inmates behind me, a little bit nervous. The inmate tells me you're using the wrong key. Thank you. Appreciate it. Which one is it? So these guys pay attention. They know, they pay attention to your mannerisms, to everything you do every day. We have to have that same level of situational awareness as we do our jobs, okay? Let's continue moving.
That means you've been there.
Who was the one that did the drill last time? Well, who was the drill?
I don't remember.
So it was already good, right? Okay. Right now, we're going to pass by the control center. It's the midway point of our tour. We'll come back to it, all right? Don't look in there. Some things might look back at you. Remember, every picture I'm in is $1. So, speaking of $1, Corrections Industries is actually an enterprise fund. What that means is we are under the umbrella of the state of New Mexico. We are a state entity, but we have to create our own revenues. So all the programs that we do throughout the state has to create revenues for us. On top of that, our main focus is inmate programming. So we have to try to create jobs, things like that, that allow the inmate population to better themselves. A lot of these guys that are coming in have never had a job before. They've never had to set an alarm clock to wake up to go to work because their family never worked. So we have furniture shop, I have a print shop, I have textiles, we make inmate uniforms, officer uniforms, a lot of different things. With all the jobs that we do have within industries, doesn't mean if you're working in the textile shop, are you gonna get out and go work at a textile shop in the streets? What we're trying to do is implement good working habits. So small skills, life skills, getting up, being polite with your coworkers, being able to take direction from maybe a fellow inmate, from officers, things like that. Okay, let's move on. So with the whole enterprise fund thing being said, when this prison was originally, scoot in guys, get close, we're about to get more prison. Not that close.
Yeah.
Prison close, but get close. Not prison close, but close. So being an enterprise fund, when this facility was first built, $8 million. Okay, I got a quote to replace the roof, or to fix it, $7.5 million.
Oh my God.
You all pay $15 a ticket, right? How many tickets do I have to sell? A lot. Probably 7.5 million. So.
You got a bigger one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A lot of tours, a lot of miles on these moves. So, if any of y'all hit the lottery or are feeling generous, please, I need a new roof, okay? Any of you have $7.5 million now. Okay, so back in the day when this facility was operational, this was canteen. Who could tell me, canteen? Who could tell me what canteen or commissary is? If you've been in jail or done the tour before, do not answer. Tell me what.
Commissary, like food?
Yes, ma'am. So commissary or canteen is anything that the taxpayer doesn't incur the cost of. As an inmate, they're allowed to work. They're able to buy what we want to call comfort items. Shampoo, earbuds, well, some buy shampoo. It just depends, right? So things that, like I said, the taxpayers don't incur the cost of. It allows them to buy more food, things like that. We sell the canteen. So that's one of the programs that we have. We actually ship about 200,000 odd items a week throughout the state, right? So that helps us create revenue that provides training to inmates. We do forklift certifications, they have warehousing skills, things like that. So it helps everybody out there, right? How else can you get money if you're incarcerated?
Your family sends it.
Family sends it. So one of the things industries does is we mandate that they save some money to send to their family. So we have a CVR fund, a crime victim restitution fund, which they also have to pay into. So we don't want them here just kind of sitting around doing nothing. They need to give back. Okay? Who can tell me what this is? The last and only, sir. Okay, so a good skill to have, right? Regardless of if you have tattoos, what you look like, haircuts are gonna be needed throughout, for most people. But it's a good skill to have, right? Very good skill. Somebody always needs a haircut. Like I said, it doesn't matter how you look. This isn't an industries program, but in the facilities, we do have inmate barbers, we have staff barbers that do it all, okay? Okay, right now, we're about to enter the Catholic chapel. If you could cut that off, sir. Be careful looking in the windows, man. I'm just kidding.
That just sparked my curiosity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, your chow hall. Your chow hall, this was very typical of a facility built in this time, okay? In 1955, any facilities that were built look almost identical to this. If you could imagine, back in the 80s, there was not a good classification system, okay? So if this young lady was in for writing bad checks, you cooked meth. I don't know why you're laughing. You cooked meth, you were a murderer. If you guys all did your time in the ways of corrections that you didn't get write-ups, things like that, well, all three of you could have been in the same cell. And what is prison? College for criminals. So now you've taught her how to murder, you've taught her how to cook meth, and she's still writing bad checks. Okay, so what we're trying to do with the programming thing is making sure everybody has something to do. Okay, so your typical chow hall, 300 to 500 inmates are in here at once. You have a corridor officer, 2 officers in here. The whole reason these doors are the way they are is so if something does pop off, the 2 officers find the wall, this gets shut, and you hope either it settles down itself or you have enough responders to stop whatever's going on. Okay, but again, back then there was no classification level, so when they would call Unit 6 for chow, Unit 6 was coming. They call Unit 2 for chow, Unit 2 was coming. Didn't matter your gang affiliation, your race, your anything. If you were called to chow, you came to chow. If you didn't, you didn't eat. That was it. Okay? Now the facilities are a little bit different depending on the custody levels. In New Mexico, it goes 1 through 6. 1 being your lowest custody level, 6 being your highest. Okay? Any questions?
So the check writer would be 1, but the meth cook would be like a 3 or 4?
And yes, it depends on their behavior in the institution as well.
Me a meth girl now.
Can't be late either.
I don't
Snacks. I'm gonna go cook some. So there's a little chow truck on the other side of Sunset. That's some fresh tacos. Love it.
Native to Mexico, that's
Yeah.
why it's in my book.
Eat. Let's go, meth maker. You're holding up the line. Made her a little bit nervous, looking at that smiles a little bit like, oh.
How did you know?
How did you know exactly? Come on, folks.
Yeah, the mural in the mess hall.
Mr. PPD, I'm going to use you for an example. Everybody look outside. What are those?
Pages.
What are they for?
Exercise.
Unless you've been in prison or done the tour before, don't answer.
Bad behavior?
Yes, ma'am. So now, like I said, in New Mexico, the custody levels are 1 through 6. 6 being your highest, 1 being your lowest. Anybody that's in the level 5 and or 6 will probably go to those cages. What is the process of getting onto yard?
Carefully.
Careful, yes, very careful. So, I'm going to use this gentleman as an example, okay? He is in his cell. I go up to his cell. Would you like, well, he's already ready to go. Look, he's already fishing. So, do you want to go to recreation? He says, yes, turn around. I open the food port, cuff up, thumbs up. I restrain him, tell the control center officer, open the door, step out backwards, sir. He steps out, 2-hand escort, to a strip cage. He's put in a cage, just like that.
We're not going to do that example.
No, sir. We will not remove any clothing on this tour. That's the later tour, okay? And so then I take off his restraints. He removes all articles of clothing. I ensure he doesn't have, ma'am, you just knocked over my wall. Maybe rehearse the example.
That's another 10 years.
Yeah, there you go. So he removes all his clothing. I make sure he doesn't have any contraband, weapons, things on him. Gets dressed, turn on. I re-restrain him. Thumbs up, depending on this gentleman's behavior. A lot of times, the way I like to say it is we allow them to dictate how we do our jobs. So if he is a violent offender, if he has hits on him, things like that, it may just be me escorting him to yard. It may be me and another officer. It may be a three-man. So it's two officers and a supervisor with chemical munitions, pepper ball system, something along those lines to ensure his safety and ours, right? That's the primary thing. Public safety and security is our number one thing. Okay, so I restrain him. He backs out of the strip cage, escort him to yard. He is escorted to yard. He gets one of those wonderful cages. He is unrestrained. He is there, then allowed an hour to recreate. Most of the time it's used for conversation. How do things travel in prison? Usually through the yard. They exercise in their cells, they conversate in the yard. Okay, the process going back, same exact thing. Anywhere an offender goes, he will go through that process with the exception of the shower. Okay, so if you can imagine running 48 inmates like that all day, to have the staff to have a whole unit full of 2 and 3 men, then you have a ton of staff that need to be in that unit to accommodate the needs of that unit, okay? Any questions?
Did they have exercise equipment or anything like that in there?
So there's gonna be, in the 16 cages in the yard, there's gonna be one cage that's a little bit bigger, has a basketball court in it. Usually the basketball's flat, sometimes there's a dip bar and a pull-up bar in most of them, and that's about all they do.
I just wondered.
Any other ones?
In today's prison, do you use tasers?
That is more used on the probation and parole side on the streets. So we have everything from mace, pepper balls, gas of many kinds, shotguns with less lethal munitions. So we haven't introduced tasers yet. We have fire hoses, which can be used. There's a lot of different things that we could utilize to stop any actions. So no tasers have been introduced yet. For transports, we do. My people leave. No, ma'am.
This way?
No, ma'am. I'm just shutting the doors. You can imagine that sound all day. Wonderful, isn't it? Okay, so cell blocks 1 and 2. Who can tell me the difference? 5.
One's one,
4.
one's two.
There you go. That's probably the quickest answer I got. Okay, so 1 is original to the facility. Okay, housing unit or cell blocks 1 and 2 were known as your honor units when the facility was up and running. What did that mean? It's 1980s, they're known classification. What is an honor unit? You're allowed more canteen, a little bit more freedom, but who was in there? Was my meth maker? Was my murderer? If they had good behavior, they could have been. It didn't matter back then. So you dictated where you did your time. If you were not well behaved, you could have been celled in a single cell area. Okay? But these were allowed the inmates to have a little bit more movement, things like that. The difference between the doors, again, the movie companies have come through. That's why you have your sliding doors. Mr. Longest Yard, this is all you right here, sir. This is where the Longest Yard was filmed. Okay? So cell block 1 is original, and if you notice, the doors have the doorknobs on the cell door itself, which allowed the inmate to go and come as they pleased up to a certain time. Okay, so we allowed them to change in cell block 2, but cell block 1 is going to remain original. Okay, we just try to keep it as historically accurate as possible. With your eyes. No, you can't go into
Like
it,
this right here.
just up to the doors, okay? So go ahead and go in and take pictures.
What was the name of that movie? Was it The Green Mile? Green Mile, Green.
That one wasn't filmed here. Very good movie, but it wasn't filmed here.
Right, that was.
So, yeah, because it was set back in
In that,
In
yeah.
that area?
So this was the way this was. Yeah, so they don't have that in themselves. They use it on. Stories that he used to hate working the south exit Because every time he ran yard, people would stop here with 6 or 7 stab wounds. Because again, congested hallway with only 21 of us. Imagine 300 inmates coming down this corridor. So he said he would wait here because he already knew he had to walk back down to medical with 2 or 3 inmates that just got stabbed. And nobody saw anything. One of the best, or not the best ones. So an inmate did get assaulted. See it on camera, very visible. You asked him, what happened? He said, I fell out of the shower. All bloody, all beaten up. And that's just how it goes. Any questions before? Oh, good. So when they went to recreation, this is where they went through. And then it was just a big yard where they were able to congregate. Depending on the facilities now, you'll have 6 inmates out in the yard, 10 inmates out in the yard. It just depends on the custody level. Okay? Let's go to keep moving. Watch your step. So right now we're passing F dorm. We'll talk a little bit more about it as we go back north, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So if you all look out the window right here, you'll see a facade that was left here from the longest yard. When I started in 2004, they made us actually go to the firing range in Los Lunas because we were interrupting the movie people. Okay, now that industry's running it, that we oversee it, that's not gonna happen. Facility comes first. This does bring in revenue for us, it's a good thing, but facility comes first. So, again, this was built in 2004. When it was first built, it was beautiful. These movie companies make some gorgeous stuff really quick. However, 15 years later, it looks like, yes ma'am.
Which one is it?
Out the back door.
I don't want who's coming.
So, the facades look beautiful, like I said, when they were first built. Now they're not so great. Okay, so now that Industries took over about 5 years ago, if it's beneficial to the facility, we'll allow it. If it's not, we'll have them remove it, restore it to whatever it was. On it as we move on. Okay?
How many inmates were in the dormitory?
It was designed for about 50 to 70.
Eh,
Designed. So,
Like 100.
excuse me, folks. 1 second. Everybody stay where you are, please.
So they had like
That's what I did for the North South old company. I'm just yeah, that's
But I can't run that fast.
So remember where the dormitory is, because that's where you spend the night.
Yes, sir. Our finer place. Okay, so, go ahead.
They said we could bring a bolo, so that'll stop you from running.
Okay, so everybody focus on that dorm, okay? Echo dorm, February 2nd, 1980, 1 o'clock in the morning. These gentlemen are drunk off of hooch. You can tell me who hooch is. That was way too quick for you to. She drank some before she got here.
I wanted to, but I couldn't find any.
Okay, so hooch is just,
Well, I found it, it's like an orange drink that they bottle there, and they actually call it hooch, and they used to sell it like at Kelly's Liquor, but
no,
it's supposed to be like the alcohol that they made in the prison, but somebody came out and like actually bottle it like an orange wine cooler or something.
okay, so that's exactly it. So,
Sorry,
we have a lot of
I
different. So, these gentlemen are very innovative. I've seen the most innovative things in the 15 years that I've been in prison. I've seen a TV floating across a tier. I've seen people changing channels with the stream. You just see a lot of things. Okay? Anyway, so they're drunk off of hooch. They work in the kitchen, they get sugar, they get yeast, they start making alcohol, right? Hooch is just like, they're drunk. It's prison. What is prison? Very predatory, crazy environment, right? If you do it, I'm going to do it 2 times better. You're going to do it 3 times better, 4, 5. It just goes on. Okay. So at 1:40 in the morning, a gentleman by the name of Renovation says, when these gentlemen come in here, if they do not secure the door, we're going to take over. They're drunk. No reason. It was just that mentality. That's all. So prison is a very unique world. The monotony that we go through is one thing, but they go through it too. They see opportunity, a lot of times they'll take it. So he says, they come through, them secure the doors, we're going to take over. Sure enough, three gentlemen are going for count. One keeps the door propped, the other is secured. What happens? It takes. So they start taking hostages, right? How we just walked through? I just heard my name.
No, it's just.
So, the way we just walked through this corridor, what did we do? Walked very freely, right? So because of lack of adherence to policy, because of your upper echelon not enforcing policy, because of your lack of staff, the monotony becomes complacency. And one of the biggest killers, in my opinion, in corrections is complacency. I've been assaulted, I've been jumped, I've been stabbed. Was it complacency on my part? Opportunity. Opportunities there, right? But how we walk through is how the doors were left. And why is that? Again, you're short of step. Lack of adherence to policy. So, had these grills been secured, would we be here today?
Well,
We hope not.
it might have been localized.
It could have been localized to one spot. That's why they're called crash grills, riot grills. It's to stop things. But we just didn't do it. So then, what do you have? Free movement right down the corridor. Okay, so again, keep that in mind. Keep that picture in mind. How cute that is, how nice that is. Let's keep moving.
You think that the riot was taking training of the officers seriously?
You're way up there. But I'm hard at hearing. I think that something happened when I came back from Orlando on that place.
This is where people drop the soap.
Jamie,
What? Just saying.
That works. Any type of revenue, I love
There you
it.
go.
Does it go to you or to the
To the division. Okay, let's all squeeze in, guys. Did you see the missing one there? Okay, so the question was posed. The question was posed after the riot. Did it make DOC in the state of New Mexico take training of officers more serious? So after the riot, one of the things that was implemented for the nation was a nationally accredited corrections academy. Okay, so then all the officers had to go through this academy. You cover mental health, everything that you would need to work in this kind of environment. Okay, very unique environment, very unique world. Okay, remember I told you to keep your eyes on the very beautiful cell block or dormitory area? I just love that door here and get it coming. Okay. So this dorm, that dorm, should look good. However, after the riot, they said they could not refurbish or do anything to this because its structural integrity was compromised. So imagine back in the 80s, you could have while you're paying for work, without working furniture. There's a lot of things that is not allowed in this day and age. So this damage is actually damage that happened during the riot. They said, no, we're not going to put it back in, we'll use it for storage, we'll use it for something else, but it is not to house inmates. So this, after 1980, was not used. So when the inmates get made it to this point, it was about 3:15. If you look on that wall, there's a little bit of information. There was an officer in here, he did grab his keys. He went into that stairwell, south of me, threw his keys out the window in hopes that it would stop any more movement. It did hold the inmates up for a while. He was letting them taken hostage, but it did slow the process.
Why do you think they didn't kill any of the guards?
So imagine nobody really had any stakes in the riot, but they knew having officer lost their lives, the dynamics of the riot was going to change. So when law enforcement did make the entry, how was it going to be? Was it going to be, we just need to secure these guys, or they took one of ours, we're taking theirs. So then you come in with the National Guard, this whole, body cam things, that wasn't existing. How many more deaths would there have been that had not been done?
Do you think they learned from that?
Subconsciously, yes. I don't know how much of an effect it actually had. I don't know what was discussed prior to it. But I believe that they said 8 officers were killed, but some of them were hurt or injuries. None were killed because my goal was crazy. Yeah. So, any officers that were getting close to that, might not make it stage, there were inmates who were tasked with ensuring no officers died. Because they knew the dynamics of their work. So if an officer was badly injured, get him out there. So there was inmates that had to come back from the war, right? It's the 80s, that had medical treatment. You come back from the war, PTSD back then, you start getting in trouble, you end up in prison, but you didn't have a skill. Those inmates were tasked with ensuring officers to get out alive. So you guys, a few minutes, do not go into that boat over there. You can check it out. She already jumped the gun, she's on it.
So the less, the better, like,
Not very many toilets.
All right, folks, so this dormitory here was designed for about 50 to 70 inmates. How many toilets, how many showers do you see? Okay, like I said, it was designed 50 to 70. If you look on the floor, you'll see where beds were tacked into the floor. Singles, right? Singles. Those singles then became doubles. Those doubles then were not enough, then they were put in the freeway. The freeway is the area where you walk, or in between the beds. Okay, so 50 to 70 then turned into about 150. 150 offenders trying to use 5 restrooms, trying to use 5 showers. It said that the officers wouldn't even come through to do count because you're walking through at 2 o'clock in the morning, you step on him, now you're mad. Now we're fine. It's 2 o'clock tomorrow, my fine. You don't want to do counts. So you fake your counts and just hope that in the morning when you did standard count, everybody was here. But it was to avoid. How many officers did I mention were here the night of the riot? 14 were inside the facility, but there were 22 officers assigned. So 14 officers to how many inmates? 1,157. This is quite a bit of a smart story. Okay, so what's the ratio? I'm not good at math, somebody. Not good, I'm not. So even now in your lowest custody facilities, it's 1 to 10. That's still not good, right? Granted, they are lower custody offenders, the double finance is probably not as high, but it's still there. How many? Okay, so any questions before we move on?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Right now, there's one fence to keep people out of here. How many fences were there?
There was 2. There was 2. So you have your perimeter fence, right? Your inner fence, and in between a ton of concertina wire, which we call no man's land. That's it, nobody goes back there. Go back there and get a shot.
As the current corrections, and so there's such a big change in how they approach corrections in the process.
I think there is, so I think even the officers develop a routine. Right? What are the inmates defend? That is your double 4/5. So there's some congregate movement, but it's still that kind of team. What y'all think so far? Wishing we what? Oh, I think we all do. But I think New Mexico is so unique in the corrections world that we're so far behind. I think this causes a huge blackout. So to have somebody like me to try to implement corrections with officers that work with guys that don't know. Because the way I do descriptions is impossible to see. Now I'm trying to be more professional. How do you do things better? How do you use things? Not for me, but for the department 20 years from now. That's a big thing. Squeeze in, folks. Like I said, get close, but not prison close. Whatever that means.
Yes, that's an answer, what is that? No.
I don't know. We'll leave it open for interpretation. Okay, so the riot started in Ecuador. Okay, like I said, there was no door secured. So then it found its way to Foxtrot. At this point, 3 more officers were taken hostage. Has anybody here been in law enforcement? Anybody here working corrections? Okay. So if you come into a facility, a riot is the worst thing that could possibly happen, right? When you're in a chaotic environment, what we deal with is controlled chaos, okay? That's what it is. It is chaotic, but it's controlled chaos. And 9 times out of 10, we have control. Now 200 inmates are out. 3 more officers are taken hostage, and this is what I want you guys to think about. One of the officers, Officer Bustos, was taken hostage. He was stripped of his clothing. A belt was put around his neck. Okay, and from this point to the corridor, he was beat, kicked, dragged down to that entire down through this entire corridor to the control center. So as we go down, as we walk our own 2 feet, let's walk. I usually ask for people to walk in silence. Okay, you come in for a routine shift. You're just here to do your job. You didn't do anything to any one particular inmate. You were very respectful. You had the respect of a lot of inmates. You did your job well. But you showed up. It was opportunistic. That's all it was. So now you have a belt down around your neck. And you're getting kicked down this entire corridor. Okay, so keep that in mind as we move along. Watch your step on your left, please. Glasses, left man. What y'all think about it? I mean, that's on your own 2 feet. If you're significant on your brother, sister, dad, uncle, friend. You might just cruising. Imagine being beat down in heaven. You just came in to do your job. That's all you came in to do. And now you are suffering a beating from 300 to 500 inmates. Because of lack of adherence to policy, because of low staffing, a lot of different things, right? So what do you have at that point? You have somebody that was inebriated that said, hey, we're going to do this. It's prison. It's already very, very predatory. But then that mob mentality sits in. Once you have that mob mentality in a place where violence supersedes all, what does that do? Makes for a very, very bad day. Okay, any questions before we go into the control center? Go. Vision of the control center officer. Okay, this young lady with the bandana, she's a control center officer. What is her primary duty? Take information that's coming in, log it down. Something happens in the unit, we need an ambulance. Information comes to her, she's able to disseminate whatever kind of information we need to the outside world, or vice versa. She doesn't need to see it. In the ideal world where you do have an officer here, everybody come over here and look out the windows. Tell me, what can you actually see? Even if that was a clear painted glass, how much could you distinguish at that distance? What can you see?
10%.
10%.
Here we go with that percent again.
You have that.
Yeah, I have.
No, ma'am, that's
Not much.
proprietary information to an old building that no one could ever know about. So you can't see, right? And again, if you're in the control center, your primary duty is taking information within the facility, logging on what's going on. Hey, I have an assault in Unit 6. Okay, I'm logging it down. Things like that. So, was it necessary to remove the file? Yeah, by that boring. You're young. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, so that was the whole point, right? It obscures your vision, we're going to remove it. We're going to put a single pane of space-age materials called the Lexan. What is Lexan? Plexiglass.
Plastic that melts when it's
Bulletproof
hot.
glass.
Yeah.
Okay, you are inside a correctional facility. The only firearms are in your armed posts. Your vehicle patrols your towers. Why in whoever you pray to's name would you need bulletproof glass? If you want to test something, bring it to prison. Believe me, it'll get tested. Okay, so right now we're going to watch the control center video, then we'll explain more. Then I'll get to you. Anything that occurred, none of the officers that were present came back to work here. None of them lost their lives. However, what they endured, I'm sure death would have been more favorable at the time too. So if you want to look at, I don't know, this day and age, mental health, right? I think that in itself is a good definition of PTSD. What they went through is...
Boy, that's the truth. You can see that in his face.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I've been with the department 15 years. Been overseas. I've done a lot of things. I don't get nervous often. Mr. Schmidt came on tour, one of the officers. And God forbid was I nervous.
I bet you were.
I did not want to say anything to disrespect that man because what he went through, and I've been an officer, so I could say I know the boots he's walking. Not to that extent. Thank God. I knew what he went through. No, I'm just trying to inform the public. I'm just trying to educate people.
Was Lucero able to get phone calls or anything outside
No,
to
ma'am.
tell anybody we need help?
It wasn't until they made entry to the control center that the officers ran out the same way we walked in, alerted the towers, and that's when alerts were starting to be. So during that whole tour with Mr. Schmidt, like I said, I didn't want to say anything wrong. At the end of the tour, he said, "You were wrong." And my heart sunk. I said, what did I do? What did I say? He said, they made it out straight through the wall. So they couldn't find the key to the control center door where we just walked in. So they actually put a hole through the wall to make it up front and out. He said, other than that, you're right on the money. Really safe place. You don't want nobody in here. You want to limit the amount of access that comes in and out of here. So if I need to hand over keys, there you go. If there may be an incident, dump some gas, close the door. Okay? So after the riot, inmates poured in, this glass, this super space age material that got entered into within 17 minutes. So now they're in the control center. What do they now have access to? Keys. The keys, see that piece of plywood there on the wall? That's where the keys used to hang. Okay, so there would have been a few pieces of plywood that just had the keys labeled, this key, that key, this goes this. After the riot, not only here in New Mexico, but throughout the entire world, these keyboards were implemented. Bless you. So, in the event something does happen, I can roll my keys out with me. Time and circumstances permitting. Okay, did those gentlemen leave? Was that the right choice? Was it better, or would they have been better off taking some keys?
Running for their lives.
Your life, right?
They didn't have
No,
time.
They did not have time. So imagine how the officers felt that ran past because the administration had said, no, this stuff is good. That false sense of security that they had must have been horrible. So again, throughout the facilities, things like this are all over the place. But again, time and circumstance permitting. Are you going to take this or are you going to lose your life? Which one is it? Are you going to just run? Those gentlemen, I believe, made the right choice.
But
So
they saw Officer Bustos, what they did to him.
They did.
So, yeah.
But there's 500 inmates out
Yeah.
there. What are you going to do?
That's what I'm saying, they saw that there.
Yeah. So that was the only thing going to, and again, this is a maximum security prison. You're here on graveyard, it's supposed to be quiet. In 14 to 17 minutes, things just went awry. You don't know what to do. You don't know what's going on. There was no training back in the day. So it was on your own merit. Do I call it in? What do I do? So it wasn't, like I said, until they ran out that they were able to make those alerts. So things like this implemented all over the world. Just trying to better. It's unfortunate that we're the learning case, that we're the case study for a lot of these things, but at least we're hoping it helps other states, other departments to not go through this, to not suffer it. We already did. We're the black sheep of corrections throughout the world. Corrections is already the black sheep. Now we got that black cloud over us. That's not
for
something.
everything in the world, though.
It is.
Chicago fires, and it.
It is. And then corrections is just looked upon in a very different way. Okay? So any questions about the control center, how they made entry? Yes, sir.
So in today's digital world, is it more automated or are you still doing the manual process?
It is, but then there's always that option, power surges, things like that. We need to have the option to do things manually. So there's, of course, like you said, in today's digital world, that is our primary, but we always have that secondary.
Were there any phones? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, there was.
Phones in here?
There was. But like I said, no training. What's the notification process? Yeah, what's the protocol? What's the policies in place? What procedures do I follow if X, Y, or Z happens? Because X, Y, and Z didn't happen. It was A, C, and G. I mean, it was just completely off, right?
Do you think that having bars would have slowed them down because they had access to blowtorches from the cell block 5 construction? They used blowtorches to cut through the cell blocks, and so do
They
you think
did.
it would have just slowed them
But that
down?
wasn't until 5.
Oh, they
So let's just
haven't
say,
yet.
in the perfect world, the crash grills were secure on that section. Would they have ever made it this way? And if they did, if the bars were here, would it have slowed it down here? Would it have given the officers in here the opportunity to get chemical munitions from that little safe down there and stop the action?
So was this all put up after the riot?
It was replaced. It was there prior to, taken down, and then put back up. So the facility stayed running until 1998. 18 years after the riot, this facility stayed rolling. But we could just never get out of that funk. That's why the new facilities were moved.
What happened to the prisoners when they were renovating, fixing it?
So the question was posed, what happened to the inmates during the renovation process? Well, they were utilized to help renovate. So any of the cell blocks or dorms that were good enough to house inmates, inmates were housed. So when the riot actually did stop, there was tons of other law enforcement corrections agencies that just took inmates until we were able to refurbish and put them back.
Somebody let the lock off.
There's that compass for you. Make sure you get them all.
Paranoid about locking stuff up.
This is the purpose. Back in 1955, when this facility first opened up, this was your high-tech doorbell. That was invented by NASA. So remember I mentioned the canteen area? It's in that building right there to my right, your left. Yes, ma'am, the one with the windows. So what that does is it employs about 15 offenders, and we move 200,000 to 300,000 items per week throughout the state. Some items are.
That percent.
Yes, some are high, some are low.
Yeah, it's good. They used to have us for the
So-
academy. It's just-
So the question was posed about the markup about canteen. So it's public record, that thing does keep this division going. What that allows me to do that, because I'm getting so much revenue through that program, it allows me to do other things that are maybe unconventional. Okay, we have an equine rescue. So I have a bunch of horses. A lot of people relate differently to a lot of different things. Okay, you're my company. Okay, I've been incarcerated my whole life, who do I get to talk to? We bring in some abandoned horses, and inmate may feel abandoned. There's that connection, right? So then that allows them to be responsible for something else, other than themselves. So, having an equine program, does that make us money? In no way, shape, or form. We're spending about $30,000 a year on hay alone. Yeah, yes.
Where's this leading you to?
No, that was never a CIP. The gentleman that leased that land used to have, but now that we took it over, it's a different lease. So again, $30,000 a year, how much am I getting out of it? None. But if I have other successful programs, I don't mind subsidizing other areas to have maybe something that's beneficial to the population. Medical, what time did they get into D-dorm? The poster on the wall. No, Echo Dorm is when it started, at about 138, 142. 3:15. That's on that side. They made it to the control center at 2:03. Why, if the riot started on the south side, would they get into medical at 2:15? Why would they come to medical?
Drugs.
Drugs, there you go. Okay, so it's 1980. What's in prison? Heroin, PCP, cocaine, who knows what else? Morphine for their own take. Okay, so now we break into medical. There's 7 inmates, 1 mental. They hear the ruckus, they hide. These gentlemen come in and start consuming copious amounts of narcotics, whatever they could find. And they're already drunk. So we're rioting. She's a weaker inmate. I mix up a concoction of whatever drugs I find. I shoot her up. Wait for the effects. She's not dead. Now I shoot up. So imagine that was the whole process. So if you could imagine the amount of overdoses that occurred during the riot. So it said that people laughed through the entire riot, slept through the entire riot, cried through the entire riot, had no idea what was going on. Just numerous amounts of overdoses of prescription grade narcotics, plus whatever you have floating around already in the facility. on top of inebriation. So it was just a wonderful mix. So a lot of people attribute the type of violence to the state of mind that they were in. So you have your mob mentality. Now you have a mob mentality that's mindset is completely off its rocker, more so than what it was. Now what do you have? Complete and utter chaos, right? Any questions? Let's move.
Did they get into there?
Yes, ma'am. So that mental health wasn't a thing back in the day. As you see in all the world, we're really starting to try to take a look at them. You know, to make mental health experts even you see a, so it means that we do have a program on but you see a change in the learning in how they can be. It's a unique one. It's a very unique relationship. You know, some of the things they say after being with them for a while is very, I had a heartwarming. It's just very, very unique to hear a convicted felon say certain things.
So do you feel like programs like that actually make your job correcting as opposed to just housing inmates?
Yes. Yes and no. So we're finally getting to a point to where we're no longer just warehousing. We're trying to program. So when I first started, it was at the north and the south units. And these gentlemen are single-celled inmates. So I would see them, right, for 10 years straight, 8 years straight, 5 years straight, right, because I'm at the facilities with them on my 12-hour shifts. They get paroled, they come back. Hey, why'd you come back? I couldn't make it. Well, how are we expecting you to make it when you've been in a single cell for 8 years? The only people that you see is my wonderful face, the other shift, and somebody from graveyard. And the only people you talk with are the 12 inmates in your pod. But what is that conversation? It's conversation in regard to what you did on the streets, who you stabbed, how to be a better criminal. So how do we expect them to change if that's what we keep?
And there's not a lot on the outside for that transition.
Exactly. So if you get locked up at 18, you get released when you're 40. When you're released, you're still 18 in here.
Right.
Now you have cell phones, now you have this, now you have that. How are you going to get back into the world with everything changed?
Or you go back to what you know.
And you go back to what you know.
Which is what fit you.
Let's stay out, back here, man. Okay, so right now we're going to go into cell block 3. What cell block 3 was your administrative segregation, disciplinary, and death row. So again, no classification system back in the 80s. This was a single cell area. You will be allowed to go into some of the cells. Again, I'll say it jokingly, but please do not even attempt to close the cells behind you, okay? Please. Who could tell me when you get in trouble in prison, you get thrown where? In the hole. In the hole. So what is the hole?
Isolation.
Isolation. So back in the 50s, 60s, when the facility first opened up, it was a sensory deprivation. And what did they do? It deprived you of your senses. So they literally put you in a dark, very dark room with a hole in it for you to urinate. And the inmates deemed how long they stayed in there. So if you were not the best behaved inmate, maybe assaulted a staff member, a lot of times you fell down these stairs, I don't know how. Then you were placed in a sensory deprivation cell, which was called the hole, for how long? A month, a week. Again, a lot of times we let them dictate how we do our jobs. But what did that do to the inmate?
Destabilize their mental
Say it again.
Destabilize their mental sense of self.
Perfect. And what does that do to the population? Now it creates a more animalistic inmate. He comes out and the first thing he wants to do, he's pissed off, excuse the language. He's very angry. He wants to hit somebody, right? So then they start seeing it as a badge of honor. I was in the hole for a month, or for however long it was. They can't break me. So it was a badge of honor to them. It created mental instability throughout the institution for anybody who was placed there. So what does that do? It creates more and more violence. Okay. Let's go in. Come on in. Officers would go back there. Why would they go back there? They go back there, make some noise, inmates would shut up. They'd be quiet. inmates would start talking again. Where are the drugs at? Who's gonna hit who? Those kinds of things. So it's a multi-purpose area. Yeah, you fix your electrical places, your pipes, your water, but then you gather intel. Okay? So it's just used for a few different things. Let's go and go downstairs. Watch your step, please.
Two hands.
Where do you guys go? So literally in between Las Vegas and Paris. Middle town, south of Paris. Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful archery ones that you know. San Antonio and all over there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Taking horses, taking back. Squeeze on in, fellas, ladies. Love the shirt. Love the shirt. Hashtag selfies in prison. Oh. Okay, so you're going to see some of these little posters on the wall. A lot of that was prior to the interviews that we got with the inmates who were here during the riot. So that was based off the AG's report of what we thought was the most true and accurate thing. So the event lasted for 36 hours. How many inmates were here?
1,157.
Good. So over those 36 hours, imagine what the 1,157 I saw, or actually that times 2 was. Imagine everything that was seen. We're only getting a fraction of what occurred over that 36-hour time frame, right? Okay, so we're in cell block 3. This young lady and I are working here together. To work here, this was death row. If you look on the floor, there was actually another fence that was here. Okay, so if her and I are working together, she would lock me in this fence area. I would start my chow, go feed, go take them in showers, but it was all locked in this caged area. Okay? So you guys are gonna see 3 different types of cells. Death row, typical cell. By the way, the desks weren't placed in the cells until after the riot, after the Durand consent decree went into effect. A lot of people attribute the riot to the Durand consent decree, but it was actually already in motion prior to the riot. The riot just helped expedite the process, okay? And that made sure the corrections department did things a certain way, that the inmates were allowed certain things, okay? So this cell, typical cell, what you're going to see next is, let's say, a step-down cell, because this was disciplinary. Let's say you are a very assaultive inmate. Well, you're going to be placed in one of these cells, so I'm able to give you directives and ensure you comply with my directives for your safety and mine. Okay, and then the last 2 cells on this side are going to be your sensory deprivation cells. So I want you all to look in. We actually removed the second door, which was the main door to the cell, just to ensure the state of New Mexico didn't place anybody in there. Okay? So So these guys are cells, so you get the patient cells. So never mind the desk, we just put it in there. So if you can imagine, okay, another cell board here. So this was sort of that sensory deprivation. Look right over here. This thing covers the light. So if this is closed, the secondary cell is closed. Pitch black. So the only light would have been from any cracks, but it just so happened that laundry had extra sheets, and they were there, covering up everything. So if you can imagine being in a cell like that for a week. So again, folks, the last 2 cells that you're going to see here were those sensory deprivation cells, okay?
I guess we follow you. I'm assuming.
I would say, sometimes I just disappear.
As we hear, I know, I was like, please don't do that. This is creepy. We've been going to this store for a couple of years. I was born and raised here, and I remember when I was a little kid, I remember we would be on the news every day, and my father-in-law was Sergeant Major in the National Guard. He was one of the ones that was deployed there. Yeah. Worth it. And she just read the book, The Devil with Butcher Shop, just finished it.
It is, what do you think about it?
It's pretty intense. It's intense.
So if you read, so there's the Devil's Butcher Shop and the Hate Factory. So one's from the admin side and one's from the prisoner side. But if you read them, they intertwine oddly well. Yeah. For some reason. And some of the things that you read in that book are just horrific. I mean, some of the things that did occur is just out of this world, isn't it?
Just the pictures.
So for the sensory deprivation cells, they had no bed, they had nothing?
No, man. You had a whole before.
That's it.
And how often did you read?
You didn't know it was night or day?
No. And they ensured you didn't know what was what, when you were eating. Nope. Squeeze on in. To close the cell doors, you could go into the cells, take selfies on the toilet, whatever you guys want. Do not attempt to close the doors behind you, please. It's an old building. Sometimes they roll, sometimes they don't. I don't want you guys to get stuck. We have a lot of keys, but we have too many for me to look through. I'm tired, I don't want to look through boxes right now, so good luck. Maybe I'll bring you a pizza or a box, empty box. So go ahead, I'll give you a few minutes, check out the cells. Their glasses again. I'm going to keep them.
Put them on your shirt. Here. When did these change?
So this was just in there, right? So
I can't imagine somebody getting put in a hole and ever doing anything to get back. I can't even
yeah, you can't rather just be. So what behavior would we take for assaulting officers?
or just this stuff.
Exactly. So I'm walking by you, I'm having a I walk by you, say something that just sets me off. And here, let's go up and see that was that's so the 60s, 70s, because there was no so, like you said, I'm happy with that.
Take away, but don't do that. Don't do.
Oh, no, they it's a big word. You know the program is that? A lot of them are subhuman. So I'm usually 7,300 business people, 97% of those, where are going? To our communities. In Texas, actually, the guy interviewed is going
For their own deal afterwards, that just blows me away.
B-roll. Or B-roll just fast enough to where you can see it or not.
But not just like he run.
Yeah. Okay, questions about disciplinary, administrative segregation, and/or death row?
You no longer have capital punishment, right?
That
When did
was
that end?
a long time ago. Well, I get punished every
I
day
mean,
at
I
my
can
job.
Google it, but
It's like,
You could, but yeah, it was in the 90s, they just, you know,
that wasn't that long ago.
when you're as old as I am, it was. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so something as basic as this. What is this? What's the purpose of it? Somebody tell me. Unless you've been in prison or jail. Shows you which inmates are where, right? So we have something similar to this on our cell doors. We call them door tags. And it's a picture of you, has your name, your number, the cell you live in. Right? I came in at 18 years old, no experience to corrections whatsoever. They throw me in a house unit, go run showers, go run yards, go do this, go do that. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what inmates live where, I just know I'm supposed to take them somewhere. I have no idea where either. So as I go on throughout the years, I learn, right? So now I have youngsters coming in, and my biggest thing is we have 12 hours to do our jobs. Let's pay attention where these inmates are housed. So I'm escorting this young man to his cell. I'm a brand new officer. He's walking to cell 1. I have no idea where he lives. I put him in cell 1 because that's where he walked. Right, I'm escorting him, but he's kind of guiding me. Or I think I'm escorting him, but he's really escorting me. Right? I put him in cell 1. He actually lives in cell 3. Control center officer closes the door, I unrestrain him, I go about my business. He hops up on the sink, pulls out a shank, and he just waits there. Now, she lives in cell 1. He has to hit her. She goes into cell 1 restrained, door opens. As soon as that door starts closing, guess who's jumping off the sink with a shank? Can she defend herself? No, because she's restrained for one. And usually when we have restraints, we have what we call a control strap. Right? So it's basically a leash, which allows us to have a little bit more control. I have my hand on the escort, right? But in the event an inmate tries to run, I may be able to control the situation there. Now what he's doing is he's dragging her all over the pod to where I can't engage her with less lethal munitions, because he pulled her behind the stairwell and he stabbed me 80 sometimes. Eyes, head, everything. Because somebody didn't pay attention. I've seen it happen. I've seen people hide in the showers. Hop down with the shank, same thing. I'm going to pull you to where my control officers cannot engage with chemical munitions because you're restrained. I have a control strap. I'm tying you somewhere so I can stick you. And the only reason I stopped stabbing you is because I didn't make my shank. And now every time I stab you, it's hurting my hand. So I'm just going to stop. Take care of that. Shank goes under somebody's door, disappears. We have somebody with 86 stabbings.
Wow.
Because of what? Complacency, because we're not paying attention. So I would tell my people, take your time, run 12 hours, 16 hours.
Yeah.
All we have is 48 inmates on inmates.
And that was the guy who told you you were using monkey.
No, that was a whole that was years later. Okay, so any questions before we move on? Go be somewhere? They're checking your steps. Okay, just making sure.
Well, Arrow goes that way, and you're going this way.
Nah, mine never follow the arrow. I'm on beat traffic.
Rebel.
Oh, God, you.
So what y'all think so far?
It's left an impression, that's for sure.
That's good. Serial sisters? Not too bad so far?
Is this heat?
It used to be, yes ma'am. Hot water used to run through those to keep this entire facility. And most of the time the water wasn't out.
That needs to make some dollars.
Yes ma'am. Gotta get lunch today for dinner. Let's squeeze it that way, folks. Now I'm in the hospital for months and months on end. So those kinds of things happen in these kind of units. Now, anytime these gentlemen walk around, they have a target. So we're going to watch a video now of a gentleman who was in cell block 4, and he kind of explains a little bit more. 2 officers got stuck. And just 15,000 stitches. Right? That was one of them. Yeah, stupid amounts. Yes.
No stitches?
Well, stitches, staples, he needed 15,000 something. So the gentleman got a deer drum there, broke his TV, popped out of his cell and just went. So I'm okay, like I said, I started at 18. Used to blood because of EMS, but when you see your people in your uniform that injured, it takes a toll. So the entire distance that we just walked, there's the same distance down here. The way it offshoot upstairs, same thing down here. One of the weirdest things I've seen, and I don't tell ghost stories, none of that jargon, there is a skeletal remains of a cat with a noose around it that I call Mr. Jangles, that's on the opposite side of the thing. I have no idea how it got there. I turned around, and I left. No idea how it got there. I'm not into that ghost stuff, any of that, but yeah. And who knows how long it's been there. Okay. Any questions before we go into death row?
So you're 33?
Just look over.
No, you need a comment about it. And I was like,
I said, everybody squeeze in. We're about to have a history lesson.
Was there a photo center?
Yes, sir. For 25 cents, please. I'll take it, then you can take 5 photos. That's a deal. 5 for 10. Squeeze in, guys, squeeze in. So there's actually a very unique equation that is utilized to
wait and
yes,
hide
yes.
your wing and not wing. Everything.
New Mexico, who can tell me when the death penalty was repealed? Cheater, you already read it. So yes, 2009. So we had 2 inmates who were actually were sentenced prior to it being repealed. However, a month ago when I was doing a tour that day, they abolished that, or not abolished, what's the term I'm looking for, somebody on that? Yes, so lack of better terms, they said, no, they're no longer on the death penalty, they will just survive within the state of New Mexico. So, but just the history of the state of New Mexico, we had from 1912 to 1929 was a method of hanging. The method of execution was hanging. That is not an accurate thing, it's just a minor example. Then from 29 to 56 went to the electric chair. For some odd reason, prior to industries taking over the old main, we did have an electric chair. We donated it to the town of Springer. No idea why.
because the boys that were there?
To the what?
To the town of Springer, up in northern New Mexico. So I used to have my horse program up there, and every time I go up there, I need to stop to check out the chair. I was actually going to steal it. Well, I at least want to go see it. I haven't yet. However, I have a furniture shop. So what I'm going to do is just actually have my guys build it. Right? Just a replica to put it in. I think it'll be a unique part of the tour. And then from 56 to 72, yes, that wonderful oven was used. Lethal gas. That is your gas chamber. It was used how many times? Twice. Once on David Cooper Nelson, but it was tested on a pig prior to execution. In 2001, Terry Clark was executed on that bed right there. Had we still had it running, those 2 gentlemen who were still on the death sentence, we would actually have taken that bed to Unit 4 at the North facility, brought in a contract company, they would have done their thing, and we would have went about our business. And then we would have brought it back to the new place. There you go, or that. Yeah. Okay, any questions? I'll tell you guys right now, no, you cannot sit in the gas chamber. So somebody was going to. But we can go to the front side, see the front side of it. Also on that other side, you're going to see the last 48-hour cells. A typical cell, but they just removed you from the rest of the population and put you by yourself prior to execution. Okay. So go ahead and take pictures in here and then squeeze in. We'll go to the front. That's nothing.
I know.
So again, it was tested on a pig, but it was kind of built into the facility. So now it's here, the method of execution changes, and what do we do with it? Well, here it is. So as time goes on, Texas, Virginia, some places we still have firing squad. But it's just as the world deems things inhumane, this or that. But in all honesty, we reinstate the death penalty. What does it stop? Look at what these folks just suffered in Texas, right? A mass shooting. There is the death penalty in Texas, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Can't
yeah.
let it give himself up,
US.
and they'll take 20, 30 years to do it,
To do it.
instead of just doing it the next day.
Right. So what does it stop though? I'm not big on talking about mental health issues. Is that the case though? Is that what drives these people? I don't know. But look at, perfect example. Death penalties still going, doesn't stop things.
Because they don't use it enough.
I'm with the next day. Is there any questions before we move on? None. Okay, so-
Is this the viewing gallery?
Yes, ma'am. So I make everybody go in there just so they can see it, see through. And then this is the part of the tour where I take off running and order. I'm just kidding.
Turn the lights off?
Yes, sir. I'm just kidding. You guys don't have to go in there. I was just joking. You can go. Here's the commotion. So there's a few different stories. Excuse me. So apparently, there is this hole down here, right on the other side of the gentleman. Supposedly he might have hit him there. There's another kind of pipe chase area up on the other side in the other room. It said he might have gotten in there or jumped up and hid up there.
I'm sorry, how many? I missed it.
So during the riot, there was an officer doing rounds.
Oh.
He heard the commotion and hid. It's also said that he gave his location to an inmate who happened to come down here. The note said, "This is my location. Do not display my location via radio." They have radios. But imagine the amount of trust he had to give it to an inmate, knowing what was going on. And he's just hearing what he hears on the radio. So he doesn't know really what's going on. But how much did it take for him to give an inmate a note? Knowing that they
Why
were,
did he do that?
just to let him know that he was safe, that where he was at, so they could hopefully.
He trusted that inmate.
That's
With his life.
If he wasn't real big, he could have died down there.
But when your adrenaline's pumping, you can do a lot.
So you might know them, but.
Oh, just the thing is that I have a.
There we go.
The thing about it. So compared to the last tour, 9 years ago, the differences?
Story-wise, no.
The videos? The good at it?
The videos are very,
Have you read the case study that the psychiatrist who assisted the district attorney did? It's really good. He was a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, and he did a whole case study on it.
You have it.
I not on me, no. It was the one that I printed off behind.
one thing for sure is I will definitely be.
Get lost.
How many visits have been
Since I've been here, there's been probably 5 or 6 movies and about 4 series. Scoot on in, have a seat.
Any idea,
To your right, ma'am.
any idea when the next one might happen?
It's him, yes. Sometimes we'll have 10 producers, sometimes we won't have any.